called Mind Games. So you are getting in on the very front of this. This is your first time today. And we're talking about how our brain, how our mind is a whole lot like a thermostat. And I don't know if any of you guys living in Wisconsin are aware of this or not, but we have absolutely no control over the weather. And there's no state like the great state of Wisconsin to teach you that, where one day it's 60 and the next day it's below 8 and freezing and snowing outside. I mean, you never know what it's going to be here. But thankfully, we have in our homes a little thing called a thermostat, most of us at least, to where when it gets cold, you can turn this up or down, and you can adjust the climate of the house to make you comfortable in whatever the weather is going on outside. Last year, for some reason, I did battle with my thermostat in our house. I couldn't get it set right. I tried to pre-program it, and during the day it would get too cold, and I would try to get it to where it would come on at the right time to take care of that. But then at night, upstairs in the bedroom, it would get too hot, and we would just burn up. So we're freezing all day, burning up all night. And I set it about 5 different ways before I finally got it right. And now this year, all I had to do is go in and hit the program button and turn it back on, and it started doing what I finally figured out last year that it needed to do. And now we're comfortable at night, we're comfortable in the day, and as cold weather is underway, we finally have the thermostat figured out. Well, for the next few weeks, I want to help you figure out the thermostat of your mind. I want us to look at how what we think about, what we focus on, will absolutely control the climate of our life. You can't control the weather of your life. Problems are going to come, tough times are going to be there, pressures are going to happen, life is going to go on this week around you, and there's nothing you can do about it, but you can do everything about your response to life. You can do everything about how you set the climate of your life based simply on the way you think about and the way you look at things inside your head. And today we're going to kind of move on to the next level of this, and I want to talk to you a few minutes about manipulating your mind. Now, I didn't say I want to manipulate your mind. I want to talk to you about how you can manipulate your own mind. TV preachers will manipulate your mind for you. I love that Hank Williams Jr. song that says, preacher man on the TV with his suit and his tie and his vest says, send your money to the Lord, but he gives you his address. I think it's a true statement. We're not talking about manipulating your mind, but I'm talking about how you can manipulate, that's an Arkansas word. You can manipulate your mind. You can manipulate your own mind into going in the direction you want it to go, and it won't matter what the weather in your life is like right now, what your circumstances are like. You can take control of your mind, and we're going to talk about how to do that. 2 things today that are involved in manipulating your mind. One is battles, and the other is brains. You've got to understand about battles, and you've got to understand about your brain if you're going to set the thermostat of your mind to respond correctly to the weather, the environment of your life around it, and still come out ahead on the other side. So first today, we're going to talk about battles. Listen to what Paul says to a church in a place called Corinth as he talks about setting your mind. He says, the weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I want to look at Paul's words about the brain, about the mind, and the power that is there for just a few minutes today. And I want to talk to you first about battles that we face. I don't know if you are aware of this morning, but we are at war. Now, I don't mean as a nation or as a country necessarily. We're in battles and skirmishes, of course, around the world. But I'm talking about as humanity, as humans. We are all in a war today. And it's not a physical war that you can see. We don't battle an enemy that we can take out an M16 or an AK-47 or whatever gun you use and blast him away and put him on the ground. We are in a spiritual war as humans. A war that goes on in unseen places and unseen realms, and it's a war, it's a battle that's raging all the time, and it's a very serious war. Have you ever noticed that there are a lot of sayings about war, kind of popular sayings, and none of them are positive? There are sayings like, all is fair in love and war. You ever heard that? War is kind of a negative thing, kind of a bad thing. All's fair in war. For some people that are soldiers here today that have been on the battlefield, you know that that statement is much truer than what any of us that have not been there realize. All kinds of things go on battlegrounds that are terrible, horrible things, because really, when you're on the battlefield, all is fair in love and war. Y'all remember this one from the late 60s, early 70s? War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing, y'all. Say it again. Y'all remember that? War, what is it good for? I mean, war's a negative, it's a bad thing, and maybe the most well-known war saying is, war is hell, right? War is hell. It's a bad, terrible monster of a thing that soldiers who have to go there and endure that changes them for their life. Well, I want you to know we're in a very real war, a very spiritual war as humans, and this thing is very negative. I've never heard any phrases about war that sound like, war, not that big of a deal. You ever heard anything like that? War, not fun, but you can endure it. We don't say those kind of things about war. War is serious. We are in a battle, and the battle is mostly waged right here in our mind and right here in our heart. I don't mean our physical heart. I mean our passions, our desires, our emotions are on the line, and we're in a spiritual battle where our enemy attacks us, a real enemy called Satan and his demons and kind of that spirit world that's going on where we don't see. And their main battleground is right here in the mind and right here in the heart, attacking you where you think and attacking you where you feel. And if we don't learn to fight the war, we lose the battles. Dr. Julie Chen is a doctor that knows a lot about neuroscience and the brain, and she talks about it in an article I read the other day online. She talks about a thing called the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is something that's known in all of medicine, and it's basically this. When a person is diagnosed with any condition, the way they mentally respond to that condition can have a lot of effect on the outcome for them. Now, I'm not saying you can just think away your disease. I'm not saying you can just think your way to better health, that if you think positive, good thoughts, you'll never get a disease. If you have a disease, you can think it away. I'm not saying that, but what medical science has discovered is if you deliver a negative prognosis to a patient, and they don't mentally respond well to it, if they just instantly give up and say, oh, I've got the big C word, oh, I've got a tumor, oh, I've got this condition, and nobody ever survives with this condition, I don't have a chance, I give up, that is going to dramatically affect your health, and you will either lose your life sooner than you could have possibly lost it, or you will get sicker faster than you would if you had a positive outlook. And medical science has come to know this nocebo effect means the way we think about our condition has a great effect on physical things that take place even inside our body. Dr. Julie Chen says when she delivers prognoses, however you say that, to patients, that she is very careful in taking off her doctor hat and putting on her friend hat. She said, when I have to deliver tough news, I want to give people the facts, I want to give them the truth, I don't want to hold anything back, but she said, I want to approach them as a friend and tell them this can be okay. And she said, I'm careful what I tell them, because she said, I believe the nocebo effect is very real. The way you think about things can even dramatically affect your health. Today, the way you think about the weather and climate around you of your life, the way you respond to your problems, the way you respond to your pressures, the way you respond to your relationships, to life itself will have a great effect on how things turn out for you. It can absolutely change the climate of your life. Paul says the same thing, but he says it this way in the passage we read. He says the weapons we fight with are not weapons of the world. He uses a word there that literally means the flesh, the human, the physical. He said we're in a battle, we're in a war, but it's a spiritual war where our enemy attacks us mostly on the battlefield of the mind and the heart, our thoughts and our emotions. And when you're in a war where you're attacked in unseen ways by unseen forces, he said you can't fight that war with physical weapons. In recent battle history, in current times, the last 20 years or so, all at once, we are developing technology that lets us fight wars in a new way because we can now see things we couldn't see before. We have things like night vision goggles that let soldiers see in darkness what they couldn't see before. They can fight battles at night. We have smart bombs that really don't need to be flown over a target. They can be shot from miles and miles away, and computer-guided systems will take them, and as we saw in the Gulf War for the first time, shoot them down a pipe in a factory and blow it up 300 miles away from where the thing is initially launched. We've got smart bombs that can fight an unseen war, and now we've got drones, UAVs, that can be remote controlled and flown to wherever they need to go and watch people or shoot people or bomb people or whatever they need to do to fight an unseen war. And what Paul is saying is, in our spiritual war, we need to understand we're fighting with unseen forces that do battle in our mind and our heart, and we need to know that we can't fight those battles with physical stuff. We can't fight something we can't see out here in the physical realm. And I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of my time fighting battles in a very physical way. Maybe this morning you're doing battle with financial pressures and you haven't even thought about trying to look at your problems in a different way. You're just trying to think about, how do I pay this bill, and how do I catch up on that bill, and how do I reimburse these people for what I borrowed to pay this bill, and you're under all kinds of pressure and you're fighting it in a very physical way. Or maybe today you're in a relationship battle with that significant other in your life, and you're having very physical battles. I hope you're not hitting each other. That gets a little too physical. But maybe you are fighting with battles of words, and you're just like, if I can just make this idiot see my side, if I can make this person see it my way, and you're fighting these very physical battles, but really you haven't even thought about fighting it as an internal battle, as a mental battle, as a spiritual battle in the mind and the heart, and you're trying to fight in a war with the wrong weapons. Paul said our weapons are not seen. They're not things we can put our hands on. They're not physical. They're very spiritual. And he even says this. He says, on the contrary, these weapons we have divine power to demolish strongholds. Paul says God has given us something to fight the war of the mind and the heart, and it's like a big 4-barrel rocket launcher that Schwarzenegger uses in Commando. The word he uses here literally means that our weapons are able through God to demolish or to tear down strongholds. And the word he uses there is a word for a castle stronghold, a fortress. The strongest defense they had in those days were castles that had huge, heavy doors that were wooden with steel interlaced in them. And you've seen them in the battles. They would pour oil out on people that was hot, and they would shoot flaming arrows down. That was their biggest form of defense. It's kind of like NORAD is for us today. NORAD is our defense system to where Russia used to be, and now it's kind of North Korea, shoots their bombs at us. We see them coming, and NORAD kind of blows them out of the sky. It was their NORAD. And Paul said God's given us a NORAD level of defense. He's given us the strongest weapons God could possibly give us to fight battles that we can't see in our heart and in our mind, where it most counts. He's given us super powerful weapons to do combat. So the thing is, we're in a battle today that's very spiritual, that's very real, but it's fought in unseen places and unseen ways. Now, the reason I want to kind of get that out of the way and tell you that up front is because the important thing is to start to understand the battle's got to be fought right here in the brain. So we're going to talk a little bit about brains today. How many of y'all have seen a zombie movie before? Any kind of zombie movie? Walking Dead, maybe. You've seen the TV show. Any of that stuff. If you know anything about zombie movies, you know that in a zombie movie, it's very important that you go for the brain with zombies. If y'all saw Zombieland with Woody Harrelson, they're constantly going after zombie brains. I mean, he's got one that he bashes in the head with a banjo because he's got to kind of take out those brains. Because for zombies, the people that created that whole zombie culture and world, they understand one thing, that the brain is what drives us. The brain is what keeps us going, kind of tells our body what to do, kind of keeps our feet moving when everything else is, even for a zombie, if the heart's dead, the brain's still kind of driving them. Well, we're really sort of like that. Our brains control us, they direct us, they guide us, and we have to get control of these heads and how they think if we're going to win the battles in life. In fact, what we have to do is get control of our inner